Zombies aren't just monsters. They're mirrors of fear, of burnout, of history, and sometimes of ourselves. So why do we keep telling these stories? Why do we need them? Let's open the grave and find out. I started working on this video because I'm genuinely so excited for 28 Years Later coming out June 20th. I wanted to do something fun and spooky around zombies because I've always loved the genre, but as I started digging into the roots of zombie lore, I realized how little I actually knew, and honestly, what I found completely changed the way I see these stories. So before we go deeper, I just want to say I don't claim to speak for the Haitian people or any of the cultures mentioned in this video. I'm here to share what I've learned with respect and to honor the truth behind the horror. I've also included some Haitian voices who have spoken about this in much greater depth. You'll find their videos, accounts, and channels linked in the description, and I really encourage you to check those out as well. Before the zombie became a pop culture icon, before the moaning hordes, the apocalyptic wastelands, or the cinematic bloodbaths, there was Zonbi. Not a mindless monster, not a rotting corpse with a taste for brains, but something far more haunting, a soul enslaved. Let's start where the story truly begins. In Haitian Vodou, a powerful and sacred religion born from the collision of West African spirituality and Catholicism during the colonial era, the zombie is not a ghoul, it's a victim. A zombie is a person whose soul has been stolen. Reanimated, yes, but not in the way that we think. A Bokor, a Vodou practitioner believed to operate outside the formal rites of the religion, is said to bring a corpse back from the dead, not as a monster, but as a slave, a lifeless worker, a tool. There are two kinds of zombie: the zombie cadaver, which is the physical body brought back to life, and the zombie astral, which is the captured soul stored in a bottle or bound to a fetish object. It's a spiritual imprisonment, a complete loss of autonomy, will, and voice. In this context, zombification is not about horror for its own sake. It's about control, it's about power, and at its core, it's about the trauma of slavery. The belief in zombie has deep roots in West African cosmology. Haitian Vodou descends from traditions of the Fon, Yoruba, Dahomey, and Congo peoples. Spiritual systems that hold sacred the connections between the living and the dead. In Kikongo, the language of the Congo people, the word zombie means spirit or even god. Many scholars trace the Haitian word zonbi back to this root. In these traditions, the dead are not gone, they remain spiritually powerful, but manipulating the dead, especially for control or revenge, is a terrible taboo. To enslave someone in death was seen as a horrifying violation of the natural order. That's what makes the zombie so disturbing. It's not a monster, it's someone whose death was not respected, someone whose soul was denied peace. These beliefs took an even darker meaning in the shadow of colonization. Under French rule, enslaved Africans were subjected to brutality on Haitian sugar plantations. The horror wasn't just dying in chains, it was the idea that even death offered no escape. To be brought back, still in servitude, with no will of your own, that was the ultimate nightmare. Scholar Elizabeth McAllister puts it this way: zombification represents the most terrifying image of slavery, a human being stripped of personhood, free will, and agency, yet forced to labor endlessly. In Haitian cultural memory, the zombie is a reflection of historical trauma. It's the body made into a machine, the soul trapped in bondage, and the past that won't stay buried. By the early 20th century, white writers had begun mining this mythology, but instead of honoring the belief, they warped it. Hollywood's first zombie film was White Zombie, released in 1932. It starred Bela Lugosi and followed a Haitian sorcerer who enslaves a white woman to do his bidding. The story twisted a tale of colonized suffering into a tale of colonial fear. And it didn't stop there. Pulp magazines in the 20s and 30s were filled with stories of zombie islands full of cannibals and witch doctors. These portrayals weren't just inaccurate, they were racist. They painted Haitian Vodou as savage and superstitious. They erased the cultural, spiritual, and political meaning of the zombie and turned the victim into the villain. Instead of a warning about enslavement, the zombie became a mindless threat to the white protagonists. It was a complete reversal of the original meaning, an act of cultural erasure dressed up as horror fiction. In Haitian Vodou, zombification is not folklore, it's a feared possibility. It's a form of spiritual violence, and bokers who practice it are seen as dangerous and dishonorable. Sometimes zombification was considered punishment for someone who betrayed their community or violated sacred laws. Other times, it was simply a horrific threat looming over the dead. That's why Vodou rituals place such importance on proper burial, on feeding and honoring the dead, on keeping balance between the worlds. Because if a soul wasn't protected, it could be taken. Even salt played a role. Burial with salt was said to keep a body from being raised. Salt, in many cultures, is a purifier, a spiritual shield. Zombification wasn't just a scary story, it was a violation of sacred protocol, and being turned into a zombie was a fate worse than death. The modern zombie, mindless, violent, undead, may dominate our screens, but its roots run deep and they tell a very different story. In Haitian belief, the zombie is not a monster. It's a symbol of trauma, of control, of the horrors of slavery and erasure of identity. It is a victim, not a villain. And when we strip away the centuries of pop culture distortion, what remains is a powerful cultural warning that even in death, the fight for autonomy and dignity may not be over. When we hear the word zombie, most of us picture one thing: shambling, flesh-eating corpses with blank eyes and decaying limbs. But across cultures and history, undead beings have taken on many forms. Some don't eat brains, some don't even have bodies, and some aren't monsters at all, they're warnings. Let's take a journey across time and tradition to explore the many faces of the undead. We've already met the zombie of Haitian Vodou, but it's worth revisiting briefly here. In Vodou belief, there are two types, the zombie cadaver and the zombie astral. One is a reanimated body, the other is a soul, bottled or bound. Neither is evil by nature. They are the result of spiritual violence, acts committed by bokers to enslave the dead or essence of the living. In Chinese folklore, the Xiongzhu is often called a hopping vampire, though that translation hardly does it justice. These undead are stiff-bodied, pale, and dressed in ancient burial robes. They don't bite, they drain your ji, or life essence, and they hop because rigor mortis locks their limbs. Xiongzhu legends grow out of Taoist beliefs and improper death. When a person dies suddenly, violently, or is not buried with the right rites, their spirit may not move on. Some Xiongzhu are created intentionally by sorcerers, others simply linger. You'll find defenses listed in old texts: myrrhs, rooster crows, peachwood, and sticky rice. It's less about gore and more about spiritual imbalance. The horror is not that they're mindless, it's that they're corrupted by misfortune. In Norse mythology, the Draugr is no ghost. It's a physical corpse, swollen and sea-soaked, that rises to guard its treasure or haunt the living. These undead warriors retain strength, cunning, and sometimes the power to shapeshift or read minds. They often return because of unresolved greed, jealousy, or betrayal in life. You didn't just stumble across a Draugr, you invoked one by disturbing a tomb or violating a vow. They are hard to destroy. Often the only way to end a Draugr is to dismember it and burn the remains or sink it into the sea. Where the Haitian zombie warns of enslavement, the Draugr warns of corruption, wealth that rots the soul, horror that clings to the flesh. In Slavic folklore, the dead don't always stay dead. Revenants are one of the oldest categories of undead, often confused with vampires or demons. These beings return after death due to violence, improper burial, or sin. They spread disease, bring nightmares, and strangle sleepers in the dark. Many legends say they cause plagues, draining life through proximity alone. To stop a revenant? The usual answers: stake to the heart, burn the corpse, decapitate the head. These weren't just tales. In medieval villages, these rituals were carried out on suspected graves. Revenants reflect a cultural fear of contamination, not just physical illness, but spiritual rot. Thousands of years before Romero, the ancient Mesopotamians feared a different kind of undead, the Etemu. These weren't walking corpses, but drifting, malicious spirits. The Etemu were souls of those who died violently, improperly, or forgotten. Without burial, they wandered. They haunted homes, drained vitality, and brought madness. Sumerian and Akkadian texts are filled with protective rites and offerings to appease these spirits. You don't want to anger the dead, and if someone was unburied, their spirit became a threat to the living. The fear wasn't gore, it was dishonor, being forgotten, being left without peace. In medieval Christian Europe, the dead could return for many reasons: self-exit, hearsay, excommunication, or unconfessed sin. These undead came in many forms. The Naxerer, also known as corpse chewers, revenants, or bloated grave walkers. They weren't metaphors. People truly believed corpses could rise to punish the living. Often, suspicion alone was enough to dig up a grave and inspect a corpse. If it looked too fresh, it might be mutilated to stop it from rising again. This was fear steeped in religion, divine punishment, a corrupted resurrection. Not an infection, but a soul denied redemption. While not zombies in the traditional sense, both the golem and the homunculus explore the horror of reanimation. The golem, from Jewish folklore, is a creature formed from clay or mud, brought to life with sacred words. It has no soul, no will. It follows commands blindly, and often it turns on its creator. The homunculus, born from alchemical texts, is a tiny human formed through unnatural means, often soulless. Sometimes monstrous, always a warning about the limits of human knowledge. Both are about control, about playing God, about what happens when life is made, not born. Zombies, spirits, revenants, constructs, they all reflect something deeper. They're not just monsters, they're mirrors to our fears of death, of forgetting, of losing control. They warn of spiritual imbalance, colonial trauma, greed, taboo, and the cost of stepping beyond moral law. And in every culture, the lesson is the same. When the dead don't rest, the living must answer for it. Zombies didn't just rise from the grave and stay the same. Over the decades, they've evolved, mutating to reflect the fears of the time. From shambling corpses to rage-infected mobs, from mystical puppets to hive mind drones. Modern zombie archetypes show us just how much horror adapts to fit the moment. Let's break down the big categories that define the undead in modern pop culture and the deeper fears behind each one. Viral and or infected zombies. These are the zombies born from science gone wrong. Infected, not reanimated. Human, but lost to something dark in their blood. One of the most iconic examples, 28 Days Later. Its zombies aren't technically undead. They're alive, infected with a rage virus that strips away reason and mercy. And that somehow makes them even scarier. This model took hold fast. Train to Busan, World War Z, The Crazies, Wreck, Resident Evil, all use infection as the mechanism for zombie creation. They scream, they run, they bleed, they convulse, and they're you if you make the wrong move. These zombies feel terrifyingly real because they don't come from dark rituals or radioactive clouds. They're made from science, from needles, from bad luck. The fear underneath? A society one breath away from collapse. A virus that travels faster than reason. This archetype reflects post-9/11 paranoia, pandemic terror, and the fragility of the modern world's infrastructure. We learned, too recently, how fast a pathogen can turn the world upside down. Viral zombies are that nightmare in motion. Before pandemics and biotech terror took over, it was Fallout that haunted us. The 1968 classic Night of the Living Dead hinted that its undead outbreak might have been caused by radiation from a space probe. It's never confirmed, but it set the tone. Science and hubris brought the dead back. This fear lives in films like Return of the Living Dead, The Toxic Avenger, and Chernobyl Diaries. In these stories, zombies rise not from spiritual violation, but from chemical waste, nuclear fallout, or secret military experiments. They often appear grotesque, dripping flesh, bubbling skin, rotting in real time. But what they embody is even worse: the idea that human technology, unchecked, can reach beyond death and poison the world that we live in. The Cold War made radiation zombies make sense. Today, they echo fears of toxic spills, government cover-ups, and environmental collapse. They're not supernatural, they're scientific sins, walking. Where science fears to tread, the occult dances freely. Necromantic zombies are reanimated through ritual, spells, or curses, bound to sorcerers, cursed objects, or ancient bloodlines. You'll find them in The Evil Dead, Army of Darkness, Game of Thrones, and across Dungeons & Dragons and fantasy video games. These undead puppets are often controlled by necromancers or enchanted relics. Some are mindless, others scream, whisper, even weep, trapped between life and death with scraps of memory intact. They reflect a different kind of fear, not technological but spiritual. These stories ask, what if the dead don't want to stay dead? Or worse, what if we refuse to let them rest? Unlike viral zombies, necromantic ones don't spread like a plague. They're summoned, which makes them more personal, more cursed. They speak to anxieties around death rituals, forbidden knowledge, and violating the line between sacred and profane. In my opinion, Jennifer's body would kind of fall into this category. These might be the most unsettling of all, because they're inspired by something real. The cordyceps fungus is a real-world parasite that infects insects, especially ants, hijacking their nervous system and forcing them to climb to high places before erupting from their bodies and spreading spores to new hosts. The Last of Us ran with that idea, creating zombies that felt rooted in nature's logic. So did The Girl with All the Gifts. These infected don't just rot, they bloom, sprouting mushrooms from their mouths, faces, and skin. They become walking ecosystems of horror, human shells overtaken by something older, more primal. This archetype reflects a deeper fear that nature itself could turn against us, that evolution doesn't care if you're sentient, only if you're a good host. And while this concept is explored in its own mini-episode, it's worth noting here these zombies don't represent death. They represent transformation, and the fact that the Earth might not want us around anymore. Alone, a zombie is scary, but what if they're not alone? Hive mind zombies don't just act, they coordinate. They sense you, even if you only alert one. They move as one organism, controlled by a central queen, parasite, or artificial intelligence. You've seen them in Resident Evil, The Girl with All the Gifts, Slither, and even in Star Trek's Borg, which aren't zombies but carry the same terrifying themes. These undead are puppets on one string. They may be fast, slow, intelligent, or feral. They're never truly individuals. They represent a fear we don't always name, the fear of losing the self, of becoming absorbed into something bigger and crueler than we are. They don't just kill, they assimilate, and once you're in, you're gone. Slow versus fast zombies, the eternal debate. Slow zombies, as seen in Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and The Walking Dead, are easy to outrun. But they don't stop. They keep coming, crawling over each other, through windows, down halls, until they overwhelm you. They represent inevitability, the slow decay of civilization, the existential dread of death, not sudden, but creeping. Fast zombies, the viral kind, changed the game. 28 days later, World War Z, Train to Busan. They sprint, shriek, crash through windows and slam into your reality like a wave of chaos. They're adrenaline horror, not about fear of dying, but fear of being caught, consumed, dismembered while fully aware. The shift from slow to fast zombies parallels cultural anxieties. Once our fears were quiet, abstract, neither loud, viral, fast. Slow zombies make you think, fast zombies make you panic, and both in their own ways are terrifying. From radiation to rage, necromancers to nature, today's zombies come in every form imaginable. But each archetype reflects something very human. We aren't just afraid of death. We're afraid of what comes after, of losing ourselves, of watching the world unravel, of becoming the very thing we fear. And zombies, in all their modern forms, give that fear a face. Zombies aren't just scary because they groan, bleed, and bite. They terrify us on a much deeper level. Under the gore, there's something hauntingly human about the fear they inspire. And maybe that's because zombies aren't just monsters coming to get us. They're what we fear becoming. Fear of death without rest. In most horror, death is the punchline. But with zombies, death is just the start. Zombies represent something ancient and existential. The fear of not staying dead, of being denied peace, of rotting in real time, stripped of spiritual closure. In many cultures, proper burial and sacred rites are vital. Without them, the soul wanders. The body becomes dangerous. And zombies? They're the corrupted version of the afterlife. A soul unmoored, a corpse denied rest. It's a spiritual trap. Not dead, not alive, just stuck. Fear of losing autonomy. Zombies also embody another terror, the fear of being alive, but not really living. They move, but they don't choose. They hunger, but don't know why. In Haitian Vodou, this concept is literal. A zonbi is a soul enslaved. In modern fiction, it reflects something broader. Dementia, paralysis, being trapped in your own body, following orders without meaning. There's something deeply unsettling about watching a human body move without a human will. It's not death that scares us here, it's the idea that we could still be breathing and already be gone. Becoming the monster, a friend, a lover, a parent, a child, all it takes is one bite. Zombie horror isn't just about getting attacked, it's about transformation. The moment when someone you love changes, when the person behind their eyes is no longer there. It reflects fear of identity loss, of disease that takes over your body, of mental illness that erases your sense of self, and worse, the fear that you might be next, that you'll lose yourself and not even know it happened. Symbol of mass collapse. Zombies don't work alone. They swarm, they overwhelm, they topple everything. In zombie fiction, society crumbles fast. Hospitals shut down, police vanish, power grids go dark, and neighbours become strangers. Zombies are a catalyst. But the real horror is how easily we fall apart. The undead just show us how thin the veil of civilization really is. It's not always the zombies that kill you, it's the panic, the betrayal, the breakdown. Mindless consumption and capitalism. George Romero saw it in 1978. In Dawn of the Dead, zombies shuffle through a shopping mall, drawn by instinct. They press against the glass, they claw at escalators. They don't need to buy, they just need to move. Consumption without reason. Hunger without end. Zombies are metaphors for consumerism, for the 9-to-5 grind, for endless scrolling, for working without living, buying without meaning. They eat and eat but never feel full. Sound familiar? Post-2020 pandemic trauma. The last few years gave us a new lens for zombie horror. Infection, isolation, panic. We wore masks, stockpiled supplies, watched bodies become statistics. Zombies represent the fear of contagion, but also the emotional numbness that followed. when the news showed death daily, and we kept going. Keep moving, keep consuming. They mirror the fear of looking at someone you love and realizing they're not who they were, not because of a bite, but because the world changed them. Burnout, soullessness, and dehumanization. Zombies don't rest, they don't stop, they just keep going. And that's too real for too many of us. In a world of burnout, overwork, and screen addiction, zombies feel less like monsters and more like co-workers. They move, but they don't live. Modern zombie horror reflects a deeper anxiety that we're already halfway there, that we're numb, overwhelmed, and feeling that we've become shells of ourselves and don't know how to claw our way back. Zombies are more than movie monsters. They're metaphors for death, yes, but also for life gone wrong, for systems that dehumanize, for fears that linger long after the credits roll. Because at the end of the day, the scariest thing about zombies isn't what they do to us, it's what they say about who we already are. Zombies don't stay the same, and that's exactly the point. They evolve with us, reshaped by whatever fear is clawing at the collective mind of the moment. Every decade births its own version of the undead, mirroring everything we're too afraid to say out loud. 1930s to 1960s. Exoticism, racism, and colonial anxiety. The first wave of zombie films emerged during the 20th century, and they were deeply rooted in colonial fears and racism. Titles like White Zombie in 1932 took place in Haiti and exploited Vodou imagery. But rather than exploring the cultural trauma or sacred beliefs behind the real Haitian concept of the zonbi, these films presented a whitewashed nightmare, dark-skinned sorcerers controlling white women through mystical foreign magic. In these portrayals, the zombie became a symbol of the Western world's fear of the colonized other. It wasn't about the horror of slavery, it was like the horror of the enslaved rising again, mindless and dangerous. These stories projected guilt, paranoia, and a refusal to understand. They turned sacred practices into spectacle and stripped the zombie of its true meaning, spiritual slavery, replacing it with pulp horror. Zombies in this era symbolized control slipping away, the colonizers losing dominance, the civilized world tainted by beliefs they didn't respect or try to understand. 1970s to 1980s, consumerism and capitalist critique. Then came the second wave, and everything shifted. In 1978, George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead changed zombie cinema forever. It placed the undead inside a shopping mall, and it wasn't random, it was satirical. These zombies weren't controlled by bokers or mysterious rituals. They were drawn to the mall out of instinct, out of routine, as if, even in death, they needed to shop. Romero was saying something, loudly. These were no longer just monsters. They were us. Mindless, habitual consumers wandering fluorescent aisles in search of something to fill the void. The horror came not from their teeth, but from their reflection of our daily lives. Romero's zombies symbolized the hollow core of late-stage capitalism, buying without reason, consuming without meaning, and living lives dictated by advertisement and habit. The real terror wasn't that they wanted to eat you, it was that you were already one of them. 1990s to 2000s. Bioterror, apocalypse, and war trauma. By the 1990s and early 2000s, the zombie was reanimated again, but this time with bloodshot eyes, shaky cam, and viral loads. These weren't undead corpses anymore. They were infected, fast, violent, rabid. Films like 28 Days Later, Resident Evil, and I Am Legend introduced a new kind of monster. One created not by magic, but by science gone wrong. This was the age of bioterror and apocalypse anxiety. After decades of Cold War dread, new fears emerged. New sicknesses, the war on terror, and the looming threat of biological warfare. Zombies became metaphors for the viruses we couldn't see and the systems we couldn't trust. In these stories, governments failed, medicine failed, and civilization collapsed in weeks. Video games mirrored it too. Survival horror put you in the shoes of the last person standing, surrounded by the infected. It wasn't superstition anymore. It was science twisted by human arrogance. In this era, zombies became the military-industrial complex's worst nightmare, uncontrollable, contagious, and weaponized. 2010s to 2020s, pandemic dread, burnout, and emotional numbness. Zombies got personal. In the 2010s and beyond, we entered the golden age of zombie stories. The Walking Dead, World War Z, Train to Busan, The Last of Us. Zombies weren't just metaphors for infection anymore. They became reflections of emotional detachment, overstimulation, and societal decay. They were everywhere. And then 2020 happened, and suddenly the fiction felt prophetic. We wore masks, we hoarded supplies, we distrusted our neighbors, we watched people turn in real time, not into literal zombies, but into strangers, radicalized by misinformation, fear, or grief. The undead now symbolized emotional exhaustion, the inability to connect, the anxiety of touching someone you love and not knowing if it would destroy you. Even the tone of zombie media shifted, from panic and gore to grief and survival. Shows like Station 11 or films like The Girl with All the Gifts didn't just ask who we could save, they asked what parts of ourselves were worth saving at all. In this era, the zombie is no longer the threat. It's the shell, the hollow version of us, working, scrolling, surviving, without purpose or peace. The zombie is one of the most versatile monsters in pop culture, not because it changes, but because we do. It follows us, mirrors us, it evolves with us. Started as a story of slavery and spiritual violation, and it became a symbol of consumerism, of science gone wrong, of collapse and survival. And now, it's a warning that we may already be the Walking Dead. Numb, tired, and just going through the motions. Zombies aren't scary because they're mindless, they're scary because they're familiar. If there's one truth across cultures, it's this. Death is not always the end. And when death is disturbed, through magic, taboo, or neglect, the consequences echo beyond the grave. This segment isn't about jump scares, it's about spiritual law and what happens when that law is broken. In Haitian Vodou, the most feared fate isn't death. It's what happens if your death isn't honored, if your soul is stolen, if your body is used. Here, zombies, or zonbi, aren't just walking corpses. They're victims of spiritual enslavement. There are two main types. The zombie cadaver is a body without will, raised for labor or revenge. The zombie astral is a soul captured in a jar or object by a boker, a sorcerer who violates sacred order. This isn't just horror, it's injustice. The soul, known as tibonage, meaning little good angel, which is the part of the soul associated with consciousness, personality, and individuality in Vodou belief, is meant to journey home, to rejoin the ancestors. But a zombified soul is trapped, cut off, incomplete, and forced into a half-life of service or isolation. It's an echo of Haiti's colonial past, a reflection of slavery that reaches even into the afterlife. And the deeper message is clear. Death must be respected. If not, the soul may remain imprisoned with no voice, no rest, and no way home. Across the world, salt is more than seasoning. It's power, purity, and protection. In Vodou, salt has a special role. It's believed that giving salt to a zonbi can release them, break the spell, and awaken the soul. Salt can be used in burial rituals to cleanse the body and ward off dark magic. But this isn't just a Haitian belief. Salt shows up in sacred rites from countless traditions. In Christianity and Judaism, salt symbolizes divine covenant and spiritual preservation. In Japanese Shinto, salt purifies spaces and objects after death or negative encounters. In many European and indigenous traditions, salt is sprinkled on thresholds, graves, or even bodies to protect the living and sealing the dead. Salt doesn't just preserve flesh, it preserves the line between life and death. Long before the modern zombie existed, cultures developed ways to keep the dead in the ground, and those methods were anything but a metaphor. To stop the return of the improper dead, you might decapitate the corpse, severing the soul's tie to the body. This was common across Slavic, Celtic, and medieval European traditions. Cremate the body, fire being the ultimate purifier. In Hindu, Buddhist, and many indigenous practices, cremation ensures release. Bind the corpse, bury it face down, or weigh it down with stones or nets. These rituals were practiced from the Norse sagas to Filipino folk beliefs. Drive a stake through the heart, a method most associated with vampires but historically used to stop any corpse suspected of rising again. In many cultures, if someone was feared in life, they were treated with caution in death. Some burials even involved cages or iron bars above the grave, just in case. The unifying message is that the dead deserve protection, but also containment. If you don't follow the proper rites, what lies beneath might not stay there. Another theme found around the world? Disturbing the dead. Whether through violence, denial of ritual, or spiritual offense, it has consequences. Zombies, ghosts, and vengeful spirits all trace their roots back to what some cultures call the improper dead. People who died without burial, were killed violently or betrayed, or denied mourning, remembrance, or funeral rites. These are the restless, the unclean, and they don't stay quiet. In Mesopotamian belief, the Etimu are spirits of the improperly buried. They invade homes, bring sickness, and demand resolution. In China, the Jiangzhu rises when a soul is blocked from moving on. In Slavic countries, revenants and striga are said to claw their way back when burial rituals are incomplete or ignored. In Japan, yurei are the spirits of betrayal, ghosts who cling to the world in grief, rage, or sorrow. In the Philippines, the undead creatures known as ashwang or mandarugo are sometimes said to arise from cursed lineage or improper death. These spirits are not just monsters, they're consequences of disrespect. Around the world, from the Caribbean to Eastern Europe to the Arctic North, one lesson echoes through every tradition. The dead must be honored, must be laid to rest, must be treated with reverence, because when we forget them, abandon them, or play God with their memory, they come back, and not as themselves. When most people think of zombies, they think of fiction, rotting corpses, moaning through the streets in search of flesh. But in Haiti, one story changed everything. A case so strange, so well documented, and so haunting that it forced the world to ask, what if zombification was real? In 1962, a man named Clarvius Narcisse checked into the Albert Schweitzer Hospital in Deschapelles, Haiti. He was coughing up blood, suffering from body aches, fever, and extreme fatigue. Within 2 days, he was pronounced dead and buried in a family tomb. 18 years later, in 1980, Clarvius returned. He walked into his hometown and claimed to be the very man buried almost 2 decades earlier. People thought it was a hoax until his sister recognized him, and then others did too. He had the same physical scars, the same memories, and he told a story no one could explain. He said he had been aware during his own burial, paralyzed, unable to speak or move. After being declared dead, he claimed a Boker or Vodou sorcerer had exhumed his body, drugged him, and forced him to work as a slave on a distant plantation for 2 years. He said he finally escaped after the Bokor died. This wasn't just an urban legend. Clarvius' account was taken seriously enough that scientists, anthropologists, and journalists began investigating. His case would become the most famous example of real-world zombification ever recorded. One of those investigators was Wade Davis. a Harvard-trained ethnobotanist and anthropologist. In his 1985 book, The Serpent and the Rainbow, Davis proposed that Haitian folklores might use a zombie powder to induce a death-like state. The key ingredient? Tetrodotoxin, a potent neurotoxin found in pufferfish. Tetrodotoxin can cause paralysis while leaving the person fully conscious. In large enough doses, it slows the metabolism to the point of mimicking death. Davis theorized that a Bokor might poison a victim with this powder, bury them, and later dig them up, still alive but helpless. From there, another hallucinogen, such as Datura stramonium, could be used to keep them confused, docile, and suggestible. It's a chilling idea. Science used to mimic death, and sorcery used to enforce slavery. But Davis's theory is also controversial. Later, scientists questioned the validity of his chemical samples and found that the tetrodotoxin levels might have been too low to produce such effects. Others critiqued his fieldwork methods, calling them anecdotal or inconsistent. Many toxicologists now consider Davis's findings speculative, and some of his laboratory results have been discredited, though his theory remains culturally influential in zombie folklore studies. To this day, there's no definitive proof that zombie powder works the way that Davis described, but the theory continues to intrigue because it offers a bridge between folklore, chemistry, and horror. Even among experts, there is no consensus on what zombification really is. Some see it as a spiritual act, others view it as a chemical, and some say it's psychological. In Vodou belief, zombification is not merely a medical phenomenon, it's a spiritual punishment, a form of communal justice. Traditionally, only someone who violated moral or ancestral laws could be turned into a zombie. It wasn't random, it was a warning to others, a sentence of shame to the person who betrayed their people. Some Haitian practitioners say zombies do exist, but they are rare, sacred events, not something for outsiders to gawk at or casually dissect. Zombification is serious business, a spiritual reality, not just a chemical trick. Meanwhile, Western psychologists have proposed their own theories. Some suggest that cases like clairvoyances might involve psychogenic amnesia, schizophrenia, or dissociative states triggered by extreme trauma. Others suggest that cultural suggestion, being told that you are a zombie, treated like one, isolated from your past, can cause a person to mentally adopt that identity. After the Clairvius Narcisse case hit the media, Western entertainment pounced. Hollywood transformed the story into a horror spectacle, turning Davis's book into a 1988 film, also titled The Serpent and the Rainbow. But instead of nuance or reverence, the movie leaned into fear, exoticism, and demonization. Folklores became monsters. Vodou became dark magic, and the narrative became one of danger and evil, not justice, not trauma, not history. News headlines boasted, "Zombies are real," but often did so with racist undertones and zero understanding of the sacred beliefs behind these stories. Vodou, a legitimate and deeply spiritual religion, was flattened into a cartoonish punchline. This distortion had consequences. Real-world Vodou practitioners faced increased stigma. Outsiders began interrogating Haitian people about zombies as if their faith were a carnival sideshow. The legacy of zombification was no longer about ancestors or justice. It became entertainment. The case of Clairvius Narcisse is still debated today. Was he poisoned, traumatized, spiritually punished? We may never fully know. But what we do know is this: the real zombie isn't a monster. It's a victim, a warning, a symbol of what happens when the body, the mind, and the soul are torn apart by science, by magic, or by a world that refuses to let them rest. Whether the explanation is chemical, cultural, or spiritual, zombification is not just a mystery. It's a reflection. Why do we keep coming back to zombies? We've seen every variation. Slow ones, fast ones, undead, infected, reanimated through science, or raised by spells, and yet we still can't look away. Why? Because they're not just monsters, they're reflections of us. They're us stripped down. Zombies don't wear capes, they don't sparkle, they're not supernatural royalty or demonic invaders from another world, they're just us. Or more specifically, they used to be us. The most disturbing part of a zombie horror isn't the gore or the bite, it's the recognition. That thing stumbling through the hallway used to be your coworker, your neighbor, your partner, your kid. Sometimes it was you, just before you turned. That's what makes it hit so hard. The horror isn't just survival, it's loss. Not just losing someone else, but losing yourself. They evolve with us. Zombies are shapeshifters, not in body, but in meaning. In the 1930s, they symbolized colonial guilt and racial anxiety. In the 70s, they became metaphors for mindless consumerism. The early 2000s brought viral outbreaks and bioterrorism fears. And now they've turned into metaphors for burnout, numbness, and emotional detachment. Zombies are cultural weather vanes. Whatever direction our collective fears blow, they move with it. They're always current because fear is always changing. And because fear is always changing, zombies never go out of style. Zombies don't speak, they don't explain, they don't reason, and that's why they're so terrifying. They're blank slates, moving, groaning, consuming, and forcing us to fill the blanks. We project ourselves onto them. We imagine what it would be like to be that empty, that lost, that far gone. Sometimes the scariest thing about a zombie isn't what it does, it's what it doesn't do. It doesn't mourn, it doesn't question, it doesn't resist. It just keeps going. And that leaves us asking, if the person is gone but the body remains, what exactly is missing? Zombie stories are always about more than a bite. They're about the moment after, when the systems collapse, when the rules vanish, when everyone you know is either gone or turning. What do you do? What do you become? Do you stay kind? Do you turn cruel? Do you protect others or protect yourself? Do you try to rebuild or just survive? And when the horror ends, if it ends, who are you now? These stories haunt us because they don't just ask what happens if we die. They ask what happens if we don't? What happens if we live on, but lose everything that made us human? Zombies are us, stripped down, broken, unrecognizable. They evolve with us, reflect us, and challenge us. They don't just moan through the streets, they echo our worst fears, the ones we carry quietly, the ones that say, what if I can't keep up? What if I burn out and fade away? What if the world falls apart and so do I? We keep telling zombie stories not because we're obsessed with death, but because we're terrified of losing what makes us alive. Every groan, every shuffle, every vacant stare reminds us that if we're not careful, that could be us. And maybe, in some ways, it already is. If you liked this deep dive, there's more where that came from. I drop long-form horror breakdowns just like this every month, plus mini episodes here and there for when you need a bite-sized scare. Make sure you're subscribed, tap that bell to get notified so you don't miss any uploads, and follow Sugar Drip Horror on TikTok and Instagram for more creepy content between uploads. Leave a comment if you made it to the end of this video. Until next time, stay weird and stay watching.